Hello everyone! Today we're going to be jumping back into Timeless with a Dimir Mill deck. Now we have a couple of things that this deck is trying to do, so I've gone ahead and separated it out into these 4 columns here. Now first we have the most hilarious turn 1 play that you possibly can here, which is Dark Ritual Ashiok. We don't want to over-invest into this, but Ashiok is really powerful on the battlefield. This is because it's going to stop our opponent's spells and abilities from letting them search their library, which is really good because that turns off fetch lands, that stops Primeval Titan from getting extra lands, right? It stops any of the tutors, so this is really strong, especially if we can go ahead and get this out onto the battlefield turn 1. Now next we have our interaction for our opponent. We've got Fatal Push here. Now I included Founding in the interaction just because we can use any of these spells with it, but we also have the opportunity to use our mill spells as well. Founding is really powerful in this deck. We have Orcish Bowmasters here, which we can flash in. This could give us a good blocker, let us bide our time into the later game while we're milling our opponent, but can also deal some damage if we are in fact going for a damage-related plan, which we do have one in this deck. We also have 4 copies of Drown in the Loch. This spell is going to get better over the course of the game. We can counter a spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, so normally after 1 mill spell, we'll be able to pretty much counter whatever our opponent's going to try and play, and we can also destroy a creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, which again, we can get up there pretty quick. Now let's talk about all the mill cards we're bringing. So we've got Ruin Crab. This is great with all the landfall triggers. You may have noticed, if you were very astute, taking a look over at the land side, that we have a lot of fetch lands. So there's a lot of potential for double landfall triggers here and a lot of milling on our opponent. Now Cruel Somnophage is a fantastic card in this deck as well. We can go ahead and use it to have a player mill 4 cards. We can actually use this off Founding as well, which is really powerful for us. But more importantly, its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. Now we won't be having too many creatures in our own graveyard, but there still is potential to have some there, specifically the Ruin Crabs. But if we are milling our opponent as much as we are, there's a very good chance that this could be a very powerful creature, and we can actually threaten lethal on our opponent before our mill game plan. So this is really good for keeping us in the game. Now we do have things that will allow us to exile cards from our opponent's library and or exile our opponent's graveyard with Ashiok, and that's a little bit of a non-synergy with the Cruel Somnophage, so we do have to be a little bit careful and a little bit smart about when we're using those abilities. Right, now next up we've got Glimpse the Unthinkable, 2 mana, target player mills 10 cards, very powerful. And then Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This card's absolutely insane. It's exile removal of cards off the opponent's top of their deck, so first and foremost, we're not going to have to worry about anything that they can recur from their graveyard. But also, since Timeless is such a lean format, a lot of the times our opponents aren't going to have expensive cards, and we are going to be able to hit a lot of cards with this. And then we also have Jace, the Perfected Mind. This is really a finisher for us, but we can use it to get some value over the course of the game. Again, if we can land a Jace on turn 3 and deal with our opponent's board with that +1 ability, we're always going to be threatening a lot of mill with that -X ability. We can also get ourselves some additional value off the -2, giving us card draw if we need it. So yeah, I'd mentioned it briefly before, but taking a look at the land base, we only have 10 lands that we can really keep out on the battlefield, and the rest are fetch lands. So it is a 50-50 split here. Now, a little bit different than you might have thought. I am including Fabled Passage here. I just like having something that doesn't force us to pay life as much. Again, we do want to be staying alive throughout the game. But yeah, these are our lands. We do also have 2 Fields of Ruin. This is going to protect us against some of the lands that our opponents have that are going to be really powerful. Very good against a lot of the popular decks right now. Now, if you guys have been enjoying my content, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on my latest videos. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like. Let's go ahead and see how this deck does. Alright, so we are going first here, and I think I can keep this opening hand. I really like what we see here. I'm going to start with the Bloodstained Mire. So the best piece of advice that I could give you guys for this deck is to definitely use your non-polluted Delta fetch lands first. Just because we can grab our Watery Graves with those, and Polluted Delta gives us more utility here. Now, I could go ahead and try and fetch Shock and play out Ruin Crab, but I think I'm going to go ahead and wait. If our opponent plays a creature I have to deal with, we could just use Fatal Push instead. And this way we can save some life. Okay, tap Castle Lockling. So we're going to grab this, and we are going to play Watery Grave to have it enter tapped. Next up, we will go Ruin Crab here. Polluted Delta, have our opponent mill some. So it looks like we're playing up against a mono black deck. And now we can go ahead and fetch on our opponent's turn. We've got Fatal Push. Now the reason why we want to fetch on our opponent's turn is there is a very decent chance of Dark Ritual Shieldred. Shieldred's Edict, I see. So we'll just go ahead and fetch here. Gonna go grab a Watery Grave, have it enter tapped. Mill our opponent some more. And now we've got a couple of different options. I kind of like the idea of playing out Ashiok here. Our opponent doesn't really have the fetch lands, but this will turn off any tutors that we're worried about. And again, I didn't really see any creatures here either, so no reason not to exile for the Somnophage. Our opponent plays Ashiok as well, alright.
Welcome to my world of nightmares.
Not too bad. I think we actually have a heads up on our opponent here. And of course, we won't be able to use fetch lands here anymore, but that's okay. We have a couple of options. I think we go with the Tasha's Hideous Laughter here. Yeah, that's going to exile a ton of cards. Then we'll minus on Ashiok again. Alright, so they are running Karn. Let's just make sure we take a look. Alright, so board wipes. Yeah, they're playing a control strategy. Looks like we hit 2 of their Karns. I don't want to deal with Karn if we don't have to. I think we would have seen a One Ring by now, if they had one. They definitely run Shieldred, though. So that's good to know. Next turn, I think we go Founding, then the Somnophage. For the extra mill. Sure, they get rid of Ashiok and gain some life. I actually don't care about the life that they gain here. And nothing good in our graveyard just yet. Oh, alright, so we've got some solid options here. Let's go Founding. We're going to play it on the first chapter. I'm going to Glimpse here. Then Somnophage. Now we do have creatures in our opponent's graveyard, 2 Bowmasters, and 1 Shieldred. So now our Somnophage is actually going to have some power when we go ahead and play it. Opponent's down to 7 cards. They play out the Karn. I'm not sure what the Karn is going to be able to get them that can get them out of this.
You will not threaten this world.
I do think we're far enough ahead. They have Cabal Stronghold for potential extra mana, but nowhere near enough swamps for that to matter yet. Either way, they're not going to be able to play something right away. They're going to mill 4 here. Worm Coil. Alright, yeah, I don't think that puts us on long enough of a clock. We've got plenty of card draw too. We're holding on to a Fatal Push. Target player, that's going to be our opponent. We're going to play out the Somnophage here. End turn. We do have Fatal Push. If they play Worm Coil, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I feel like that's a waste of their mana. They definitely need something a lot better. Okay, Shieldred, that's fine. Next turn, let's see. We won't be able to exile anything because of Ashiok. They're down to 2 cards. So we just have to survive long enough. We could make a case for swinging here. Liquid Metal Coating, sure. Maybe they try and destroy our lands. Draw, lose some life. Bowmasters. So we can Bowmaster, ping Ashiok. But first, let's Fatal Push. Again, we're not really going for damage on our opponent here, so I'm just gonna flash out the Orcish Bowmaster. I'm actually going to ping down Karn here, because I don't want to deal with the Karn Liquid Metal shenanigans. Then we'll swing with the Somnophage into Ashiok. Just to get rid of that. Again, our opponent's life total doesn't matter. 2 cards left, and we've got it.
Your nightmares remain.
Alright, so we've got our opponent going first. Turn 1, we can hold up Fatal Push. Turn 2, Founding Glimpse. I kind of like this. We can keep this. I'm going to start with the Bloodstained Mire. We'll go ahead and just pass here. And if we need to Fatal Push, we can Fatal Push. And that's fine, but ideally nothing's really happening this turn. We are playing a little bit of a slower game plan while we're on mill. We might be playing into a control deck here. Yep, so we're definitely wary of the counterspell next turn. We're still going to go for Founding. If Founding pulls counterspell, that's fine. That'll enter tapped. And honestly here, I'm just going to go for Island. Play out Founding. Yeah, we get the Memory Lapse, and that's fine. Alright, our opponent's not in the best spot in terms of lands. We're going to play out the Flooded Strand, and we are going to go for Founding again. Played on 1. Now here we're going to Glimpse. And now with Drown in the Loch, we should be good for quite a while. I guess that's enough. Alright, so this is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and keep this opening hand, and this is exactly what we want to be doing with this deck. We pay 2 life, Dark Ritual, Ashiok. And we've got it. Okay, so that last game was really funny. I am going to take a mulligan here. How do I feel about this? This is okay. We're going to mulligan one more time and keep the 5. We'll get rid of these 2 cards right here because we have ourselves another one of the best starts for us. Dark Ritual, Ashiok. Let's mill our opponent, see what they're on. Okay, so we're looking at a Rakdos deck. We don't really have much extra in terms of a game plan here. But now we can hold up Bowmasters.
This is my masterpiece.
End the turn. Bloodstained Mire. Crack it. Yep, that's fine. They can't search their library. I think they just learned a very important lesson. Do I want the Watery Grave? I think I will take the Watery Grave. And I'll pay the life. This is fine. We'll flash out the Bowmaster. Let's start putting some damage on our opponent. They're already very far behind. Here we'll use Glimpse. Great draw. And go ahead and get rid of more of our opponent's graveyard. I am, I think, slightly concerned about a dashed Ragavan hitting Ashiok, so I am just going to swing with the Bowmasters here, and we'll play Fabled Passage as the land. Okay. Opponent does find another land. But it is a black land. Still no access to red. Alright, so things are looking pretty good for us here. They do run the Bowmaster as well, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hang on here and pass the turn. We're holding up the Tashas just because this is going to end up being a tap land, since we don't have the 4 or more lands. So we'll just wait. But 28 cards left in our opponent's library. I think they're sufficiently far behind. Yep, there's the Bowmasters like we thought. Let's see, probably gonna ping our own Bowmaster. Yep. The important thing is we have blocks for Ashiok. We're gonna crack Fabled Passage on our opponent's turn. Make them think we have the counterspell. Ah, Thoughtseize, unfortunate. I imagine both of those are gonna swing at the Ashiok. Well, I mean, I'll block. Ashiok is more important. Now I am gonna activate this. We'll just grab an island. Delta. End the turn. Bowmaster's probably gonna hit the Ashiok. That would be my guess at least. Yep. And then maybe they flash in another one to kill the Ashiok. Let me see how many of them we've got there. 1. Okay. Delta, sure. Deeply unfortunate for us. Let's go ahead, play out our swamp. And I'm just going to minus Ashiok here, get the extra mill out of it. Opponent can finally go ahead and get themselves a red land. So now we're kind of hoping for a good top deck here. Yep. Happy opponent finally gets to see their first red land of the game. And they do have a Blood Crypt. I am really missing the Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Yep. Okay, sure, they use it immediately on a Lightning Bolt. And there's the Ragavan. They dash the Ragavan for treasures. Yep, trying to fix this problem that they've had for quite a while. Yep, find a Fatal Push. That's not going to be very useful, and honestly, I'm glad they took that off the top. Fatal Push isn't bad for us to draw, just because we can kind of use it to protect ourselves. But I definitely want to see something more aggressive here. Only 20 cards left in our opponent's library. See, founding a third path would be great. Alright. Or this. This is perfect. There goes our opponent's library. And we win the game. Alright, opponent goes first, but we do have that turn 1 Ashiok, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this. This looks like a great starting hand to me. Okay, opponent starts with the Steam Vents, so we go Delta. We do have to be careful. Spell Pierce is a problem for us. Let's see. Steam Vents, they could be running Blood Moon as well. Do I want to just grab a Swamp here? I think I do, because we'll have access to all the basic islands we need. Dark Ritual, Ashiok. Again, here's hoping for no Spell Pierce. And there is no Spell Pierce. Let's get some more information here. Alright. They bolt the Ashiok. Alright, might have another removal spell there. Either way, they're devoting a lot of their early resources to that Ashiok, which I certainly don't mind. Let's go Can't Wake Up. Again, I imagine if they have Spell Pierce, they would have used it on the Ashiok. Yep. Brainstorm, sure. We can go for Tasha's next turn, unless they're holding up Counterspell mana. But even then, I think it might be worth it. Dragon's Rage Channeler, sure. So they are holding up mana. I think we go for the Jace. We try it. If we get Memory Lapsed here, we get Memory Lapsed here. But we do not, and we can turn off the Dragon's Rage Channeler, so this is about as good as that could be for us. Bowmaster, sure. Jace is only... doesn't even hit the Jace. Alright. Oh, they have the Unholy Heat. This makes more sense now. So we have a Bowmasters of our own. think let's start by trying to mill our opponent some more. And then we'll just pass the turn. We can flash out the Bowmasters if we need to. Bolt the face, sure. We also do know that our opponent runs Brainstorm, so it would be so nice to cast Bowmasters in response. I am going to use it here, though. Black land. Bowmasters. If they have a counter, they can use the counter. This is fine. We ping down their Bowmaster. Snapcaster, sure. Snapcaster Bolt? Is that what they're trying to do here? I guess Snapcaster Bolt face? Interesting. I mean, this is still a decent trade for us. I could hold this back to block the Snapcaster next turn. And I actually think that's alright. Okay, Tasha's. Opponent down to 14 cards. All we have to do is survive this turn. Yep, we block Snapcaster. Still lose to a Bolt. Dragon's Rage Channeler, sure. Delver, okay. And then we just go ahead and play out Tasha's, get rid of their entire library. Play our land for fun, and pass the turn for the win. Alright everybody, this deck is a ton of fun to play. For me, there's nothing quite as satisfying as that turn 1 Dark Ritual Ashiok, since most decks in this format are going to struggle to deal with that. It gives us immediate access into looking at our opponent's deck, with that minus ability and doing that initial mill, which gives us very important information. We can also lock our opponent out of all of their fetch lands from the get-go, out of their tutors, and really this is going to be very strong as a start. That extra time is also going to help us since we are playing a little bit of a slower game, since mill is not as aggressive as some aggro decks. One of the other fun things to keep in mind is while Tasha's is always a powerhouse, since most of these decks are lean, it gets even stronger when we're playing up against aggro decks that we're typically weak against. So if you know you're playing up against an aggro deck, if you're playing a best of 3 format, definitely try and prioritize finding Tasha's. Now let me go through a couple of the other tips that I've learned just through playing this deck. So number 1 is when you're trying to pick your fetch lands, Polluted Delta should be the last fetch land that you play, since this gives you the most versatility between picking either a swamp or an island. Now that being said, you may find a situation where you think your opponent is playing a Blood Moon and it's going to be better to get the basic land types that you want. This deck functions perfectly fine with 2 blue lands and 1 black land. So if you have 2 islands and a swamp, you are going to have a fine time playing this deck, right? But however you manage to make that happen is fine. Aside from that, other things to consider with Ruin Crab tends to be a target for lightning bolts. So you've got a couple of potential options here. You could try and play the Ruin Crab turn 1. If you're on the draw, this would be to block a Ragavan or something like that if you know your opponent might be dashing a Ragavan on turn 2. But if you think you're going to be safe from any turn 2 interaction from your opponent, definitely save your Ruin Crab for the turn that you drop a fetch land. Because this is going to be a 1 mana opponent mills 6 if you play it and then use the fetch land. Well, otherwise it might just be a 0-3 for 1 mana that doesn't do anything if you play it on the first turn. So be a little hesitant with your Ruin Crab and save that. Other things to consider is Founding of the Third Path is really powerful. Again, you can always use the Read Ahead feature. So if we are in the late game, I know we drew Tasha's when we needed it in one of our previous matches, but if you do have something like Tasha's in your graveyard and 5 mana, it's the late game and you're looking for a good top deck, Founding is really strong since you can go ahead and push that out onto the 3rd chapter. So yeah, that's pretty much all the advice I have for you. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you have any ideas for another deck that you'd like to see me play, why don't you let me know in a comment down below. I'll see you all next time.